Friday morning, week 13 NFL. We're talking DFS across the entire slate. All coming up next on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Happy Friday morning, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, the Friday morning DFS version. I am Scott Jenstad, joined by Ryan Belongia. Yes, I'm back. Sorry, it's been a couple weeks since I was gone. A little holiday, a little bit of work, but it's good to be back. Ryan, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. Yeah, it's good to have you back. We got the Niners in the marquee game of the slate here. So
is there a big game this week? I hadn't looked at the schedule yet.
There's a massive game this week, and I think you're probably the perfect person to break it down. So that will be nice. Yeah, I had a little holiday as well, but nice. It's nice to be back, and we got an interesting slate here.
It is. I think we might have our first 100% running back of the season. It's there's kind of, we always say automatic slot, but man, this week might actually be one. But Niners Eagles should be great. The great thing about this game is these teams legit hate each other, which is you don't get that a ton anymore, but these teams do not like each other. There's been a lot of back and forth. The Niners feel pretty cheated by last year in the AFC Championship game where the quarterback gets hurt in the first drive. I think the Eagles are tired of hearing about the whining and just want to realize that they won the game. So, which I kind of get both ways, but it should be fun. I think there'll be a little bit of hard hitting, especially early.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm not sure what to think about it for DFS because, there's not a lot to love on this slate. Maybe let's say outside the Dolphins. And a lot of the best players on the slate are in that Eagles-Niners game. But it seems like a tough spot for the Eagles. The Niners defense has looked incredible. It really makes me not want to pay up for Hurts or his receivers. Not really sure what to do about the San Fran side. I mean, how do you think that game goes? What's the totals? Around 47 right now?
Honestly, I'm worried about, in terms of that in fantasy, I'm worried about the weather. It's supposed to rain. I think I don't have a lot of Brock Purdy concerns. I know there's people that like to have that concern, but my only one concern is how does he do with the wet ball in the rain? That Cleveland game, it started to rain a little bit. The ball slipped out a couple times. He's not a huge guy where he has the Justin Herbert quarterback hands kind of thing. So I think that the rains are the one thing out there that we don't fully know about Brock yet. I think that he's kind of proven everything else this year that we need to see. But that weather's important. I'm looking at the weather right now. It's 83% chance of rain that day. No wind or anything. And the temperature's fine, but it could be really wet. It's it looks like more rain during the day too, but it's a little bit later game. It's a 4:25 on the East Coast. So maybe it goes from rain to showers. But I think the weather's a big impact on the game, and obviously something we won't know about with it being on the late window of the slate.
Yeah, I will definitely be paying attention to that. I think that's a good reason to not fade the game, but fade the passing games for sure. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always so hard because it's, you don't know. Maybe it stops 20 minutes before the game. It doesn't impact anything, and they dry the balls really well. So it's not actively raining. It's not going to be a problem. It's an interesting game to talk about because there's a lot of – you mentioned it. Slate's a little bit weird. We got a lot of teams that are off. We got a lot of teams that are playing prime time games. We had Seattle and Dallas, a lot of big names in that game played last night. We got some big names on bye. So it's a week where you got to find some guys. And, I just think that you can't totally cross it out because there's a lot of big names in that game. But – yeah, the defenses and the weather, impact what you do there a lot for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I was worried last week. I had Hurts last week, and
the worry didn't last too long, but it sure was there for a while.
No, but sure in the first half, and even with the weather, the weather was kind of like that in Buffalo, rainy and bad in the first half, and I had some messages from people saying should we have known about this? Should we have taken this into account? Because it did look like maybe it was playing some part in Hurts struggling, but I don't know, Hurts then with a massive second half. One of the craziest, I don't know, I had no chance in cash games. I mean, I was completely dead, and then Hurts just out of nowhere saved everything. I don't know, it felt like a miracle.
Yeah, it was funny because I was looking really good early because I don't know if you remember, there was like 23 minutes before it was the first touchdown on Sunday. It was like this weird stretch of nobody doing anything. And then I had Justin Lawrence, which turned out really well. And then I had Bijan and Derrick Henry both scored twice. I'm like, oh, I'm in easy. And then all of a sudden the Philly Buffalo game went just bonkers. So anybody with Josh Allen and Hurts, and then the problem was I had Bijan and Henry looked really great, but that meant I didn't have Kyron Williams, and suddenly I went from like, oh my gosh, it could be a really good Sunday to holy crap, I'm dead within it was like 45 minutes. It was just gone.
Yes, the same thing happened to me in tournaments because I did not have Hurts or Allen in tournaments, and I did not have Kyron. So they all put up massive scores. I mean, Allen had 40-some points as well, Kyron 41 points. And yeah, so we got good games from our guys and ended up getting blown out of the water. Happens.
I just called Trevor Lawrence Justin Lawrence, and I think Justin Lawrence is a closer for the Rockies last year. I don't know. I'm clearly out of football mode, but obviously I had Trevor Lawrence, not Justin Lawrence, for a bit.
I think you're so used to having Justin Herbert on your teams.
It probably is. I said Justin Lawrence too. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. I was like, that's not right. But yeah, I had Trevor Lawrence, and he actually played really well, and I really liked that game. And the Buffalo Eagles last 25 minutes just killed it. They Allen ended up with 40 something points. It was a wild game. I still don't totally know how Buffalo lost that game, but they certainly found a way. People still alive in survivor pools. There were some people sweating Philly there, and I thought they were dead.
Wow, yeah.
So let's get into this slate. We're at week 13 already. This is crazy. This stuff is flying fast. We got a lot of players to talk about. We only 10 games on our main slate this week, so it's one of those ones that you kind of start to consider guys that maybe you wouldn't if there were 13 games on the slate. But we have 10, 7 in the early window, 3 in the late window. Primetime games I mentioned off the slate. I mentioned Seattle Dallas last night. Really really fun game too. I don't know how Seattle lost that game either. It seemed like they were really getting control there for a while, and then just couldn't get it done late. KC is at your Packers. Kind of a fun Sunday night game. Jordan Love looking better than the last couple of weeks than he really has most of the season. He looks a lot better. He really looks looking good the last couple of weeks. Cincy in Jacksonville, which would have been a really good matchup except for the Joe Burrow injury. I got his first name right on that one, so he must be hopefully it's only Trevor Lawrence. 6 teams on bye this week. Really late for 6 teams to have a bye. Week 13. If you're one of those teams, you must be just waiting for this bye. That's a tough schedule cork right there. Bills and Ravens, so some big names there. Bears, we're good there. Raiders, and then Vikings and Giants. So a mix of teams you wouldn't want to play anyway, and a couple of teams you would normally play. So it pairs it down pretty good. 10 games is not very many.
No, and like you said, a lot of the best options are not on the slate, or who would normally be the best options. For me, it really makes Miami stand out on this slate.
Yeah, it does.
50-point total. Miami has a 30-point implied total. It's just this spot against the Commanders that everybody keeps targeting, and it keeps working out. Dallas on Thanksgiving was another example. Washington's just been a great team to stack their games based on how often they pass. I don't know. It's tough for me to look past that spot, but I do think there are some other interesting games. I kind of like this Texans-Broncos game. I didn't really, expect to think that maybe a few weeks ago. I mean, it was just an awful start to the season for the Broncos, and now they've won 5 straight and in the playoff hunt. CJ Stroud was great again last week. DraftKings priced him all the way up over 8,000, which is crazy to see.
It is.
But it's another good spot for their pass catchers. Tank Dell and Nico Collins specifically. Dalton Schultz might be out, which is just sort of be another boost there, and maybe bring minimum price Brevin Jordan into play. There's some interesting value on the Broncos side. Javonte Williams, the receivers are cheap. Russ has been playing well again, running more. So I think that game's pretty interesting. And then other than that, not much in terms of stuff I want to stack. I was hoping maybe you had an opinion on Detroit, New Orleans. But in these other games, maybe just a piece or two here or there. And then, of course, that San Francisco Philly game to close it out. I kind of like to just fade that game for the most part. But yeah, I don't know. That's how I was looking at the slate. What stood out to you?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit them. I mean, there's 4 games that have a total over 43, and you nailed them. It's Dolphins Commanders is 49.5, Eagles Niners 47.5, Broncos Texans 47.5, Lions Saints 46.5. None of them are like, oh, there we go. But I mean, it's Dolphins Commanders, and the Commanders is such a good team to play against because they throw the ball so much too. So like if they get down, Sam Howell's thrown the ball over 40 times, I think 6 games in a row. Like it's a crazy stretch where they can't stop anybody and they'll come back and just throw at you. It's kind of exactly what you want. And, it helps because usually like, oh, the Dolphins might get too far ahead. But, if Washington just keeps throwing and keeps playing, like I don't think Miami won't take the foot off the gas. So it's, I think that's an obvious one. I think a lot of people are going to touch that game. I think what you do with Niners Eagles is kind of what the slate comes down to. I mean, you seem like you're leaning towards a fade. I maybe not so much. I think if the weather holds off, and obviously I don't know that, the weather holds off, I think this is actually going to be a decently high-scoring game. I think that the Niners defense is playing great, but the Eagles defense is just so good. I mean, the Eagles offense is just so good. I mean, 2 receivers, and no Goddard really helps the receivers too. I think that we've seen that with Devontae Smith is a completely different target percentage when Dallas Goedert plays or doesn't play. Like the numbers are pretty stark. I think the Niners were going to – the interesting thing is that last week Charvarius Ward shadowed DK Metcalf and played really, really well. Probably the best game Ward's played since the Niners signed him before last season. Really played DK well. I think that Steve Wilkes will probably be like, you know what, let's just do it again. I think that's going to shadow A.J. Brown, which makes Devontae Smith really interesting to me. I think that's the preferred play on my end, just because the Niners have, other good DBs, but Charvarius is the clear number one. You got Ambry Thomas, you got Diamador Lenore, you've got, there's some other guys in there. They've benched a couple guys. It seems like Lenore and Ambry Thomas are the 2 guys right now. I like Devontae Smith. I'm going to play someone in that game from the Eagles side. That's who it's going to be.
Yeah, I think the Devontae Smith is a really sharp call. Just in general, I worry about the Eagles coming off this stretch that they've had. I don't know, second best against the Chiefs and win, second best against Buffalo and win. I mean, they've had such a tough run. I'd almost like them more in this spot had they got blown out by the Bills, but I just see the Niners defense has looked unstoppable, and I don't know. I 3-point favorites on the road stuck out to me too. I could see San Fran.
I could not believe when that line came. I'm shocked. I thought it was going to be Philly -1. I think it was going to be really close. People respect the Niners, but man, you look at what they did to Seattle's offense. You look what Seattle's offense just did last night to Dallas. Like, I don't know. The Niners killed that. They killed that offense. The defense looked really good outside after the bye.
Yeah, it's tough not to agree with that. I guess they seem like the better team, and it just seems like a tough spot for Philly. Everything points to this, sort of a revenge game for San Fran. I like the spot for the Niners.
The Philly defense was on the field for 92 plays last week.
Yeah, I mean, right? Like this is a letdown. This is a letdown spot. Yeah. I mean, how do you keep getting up for these spots, and especially when you have to battle back with these tough wins over and over?
You know who they play next week too.
Yeah, I mean, so it's I don't know. I see why San Fran's favored. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm so biased on that one, but I was a little surprised. Just 10-1 at home. I thought it'd be Eagles by a couple, but clearly I was wrong there. But let's talk Lions Saints real quick. It's an interesting game that I think maybe 3 weeks ago we would have been like, oh, let's stack this game. But the Saints are so beat up right now. Michael Thomas is out. Chris Olave has had the concussion last week, so he's in the protocol. He's one of those maybe he'll play, but it always leans to no unless you're Brock Purdy. Not many guys have gotten cleared out of that in the same week. Shaheed is a little banged up too. It's hard to really stack this game because I don't know who you play. I think that A.T. Perry will be pretty popular for the Saints. He's really low, and he might, if all those guys sit, I think just kind of 3,300. You got to play him just because there's nobody else there. But how do you feel about Lions right now? The last couple of weeks have not been great for the Lions. Jared Goff, I think, has 6 turnovers himself in those games between fumbles and interceptions. How are you feeling about this game right now? Because I think 3 weeks ago we would have been all over it. The total probably would have been 51, 52. Feels a little bit different right now with the injuries.
Yeah, I think you broke it down perfectly. I would like to be on it, especially in a dome. Teams that play pretty fast. teams that usually are good for stack. Like, yeah, I would like to be on it, but like you said, it's tough. Detroit, Goff hasn't looked good lately. They have two running backs that are tough to pin down. I mean,
That's the hard part right there. Yeah.
Like, I'm always okay playing Amon-Ra, especially on this slate. I think he's probably a pretty good play if people aren't going to go there. But yeah, what do you do from the New Orleans side? I played a ton of.
You play Kamara.
Yeah, you could play Kamara. I played a ton of Shaheed last week. Felt bad about that one when he got injured early. I think Olave would be a really good play. But yeah, again, we don't know, might not know. That concussion protocol is weird. It seems like it could go either way.
Yeah.
I think Juwan Johnson might be kind of popular. Cheap tight end if you get some of those receivers out. Yeah, I think people played A.T. Perry last week and he had one catch for 70. I don't know. I'd be worried about playing A.T. Perry.
Yeah, I think it would be that if Olave and Shaheed sit, like suddenly there's nobody left. And he played a lot of snaps last week. He just didn't do anything. He's also attached to a quarterback we don't love there that kind of checks down. I think Kamara might catch like 12 balls this week.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if those receivers are out, maybe it's just a Kamara spot. Maybe it's a Taysom Hill spot.
I was going to say, it's also lined up for a Taysom Hill, like 3 different kinds of touchdown spot, right?
Yeah, you could definitely see that. Yeah, okay. I mean, if Olave and Shaheed are both out, I guess I can see Perry.
These other games, we got 6 other games. Are any of these games you like to maybe surprising and go over? Real quick, we got Colt Titans at 42.5, Cardinals Steelers 41.5, Chargers Patriots 40.5. It's kind of sad what's happened to New England there. Browns Rams 40.5, Panthers Bucks 36.5, and believe it or not, Ryan, we have a 33.5 total in the modern day NFL. It's almost like an Iowa game up in here. Falcons and Jets 33.5. That is disgusting right there. Are any of these games you're like, maybe I could talk myself into playing some guys from these games?
Yeah, I could see the Steelers going over. I don't know if the Cardinals can keep pace, but the Steelers, I think it's a pretty good spot. I mean, couldn't believe the space and the holes for Kyren Williams last week. I mean, the Arizona defense did not look good. And, new offensive coordinator for the Steelers. The passing game looked better last week. Freiermuth crushed. I know, people thought it might be Pickens. It wasn't yet, but, this might be the time for Pickens. He's cheap. Deontay's cheap. Both their running backs are cheap. Jalen Warren ended up pretty popular last week, and of course, it ended up being Najee Harris with the big game. But yeah, I don't know. I can see this being a nice spot for Pittsburgh.
Do you think DraftKings just let me split the difference between the 2 running backs and just play both of them in one spot?
That would be great. Yeah,
man, after watching Kyren Williams last week, I'd love to just. I don't know how you can go through all kinds of things and picking which Steelers running back, and one of them is probably going to do really well. I think anybody who tells you they really know how to break it down on that is probably full of it. Like, it could go either way. Najee actually looked pretty good. Had a couple of nice runs. Jalen Warren obviously been the more explosive guy, but like trying to figure out which guy hits the big play, which guy hits the touchdown. It's really tough. But in tournaments, I think they're both very, very live because one of them's probably going to do really well and go.
Yeah, Najee has taken a lot of heat this season, but I saw a stat that he leads the NFL in 15-yard rushes, which I was surprised to see.
I would have needed a lot of guesses to get that one right.
Yep, it's true.
Before we do jump into players, I think we got to talk about the elephant in the room. We have a running back in the Colts Titans game. Zach Moss is 4,600. I assume he's just like I never want to use 100%, but he's going to be like 93% in most cash games, and obviously very popular in tournaments. Just give me your thought on: do you just slot him in this week and play him at 4? He's so low at 4,600, and has done really well and did really well against the Titans his first game. Like, killed the Titans the first time around. He's been clearly the backfield horse when JT's been out, like in over 80% time. Like, all the numbers are there. Is this situation strategy wise in cash games? You just play him, and in tournaments, so you're like, well, everybody's going to have him. I'm going to go elsewhere, just kind of eat it. What's kind of your general thought on someone who sticks out this much on a slate?
Yeah, it's tough. You're right. I think he's going to be the highest owned player maybe we've ever seen, close to
Yeah.
close to 100.
Definitely. I think this year the highest owned guy.
Yes, for sure. Like close to 100% in some cash games. I could see him over 75% in like the small field tournaments, single entry tournaments.
Yeah. But he's gonna
I
be
don't
like
know.
a 55, 60% guy in big tournaments, I think, too. Like I think just
Yes, like over 50% in every single tournament for sure.
there's a running back combo that I think is gonna be crazy high percentage this week. We'll get to it. We talk running backs, but I don't know if running back it's gonna be very popular this week. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I hesitate to, call Moss a free square, but it's close to that. You mentioned he crushed the Titans last time. I
Yep.
mean, I don't think there's really any concerns about the matchup. He's going to be involved in the receiving game plenty. Yeah, I'm leaning towards playing him. If I was playing the bigger field tournaments, then I think he's probably a pretty good fade. Anytime on a 10-game slate when you're going to have someone that chalky in a sport that's with as much
Right.
volatility as the NFL has. Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to fade him in some of those tournaments. I mean, there are other cheap running backs. We're going to mention plenty of other cheap running backs to take a chance on. I mean, they're not
Yep.
as cheap as Moss, but you'll have the money if you need it. So yeah, I think it makes sense to fade him in tournaments. I'm leaning towards playing him in like my single entry stuff. I mean, it just seems like close to a free square,
Weird question. I know I've asked you. But what is your like go-to tournament on DraftKings?
Okay, I play like the $200 single entry, the couple $100 single entries, the couple $50 single entries, and then I put 3 into the $150 3 max. That's
Okay.
like the biggest.
I like
That
that. That's a good tournament right there.
Yeah, that one has 100K to first,
Yeah.
and we're chasing this big prize, so
Yeah.
that's really the only reason I'm playing NFL. They got the biggest prize pools, but yeah, so I play those, and then I put 5 in the $33 5 max, and then the smaller single entries, the $12, the $5,
Yeah,
$3,
I like the 12. I like the
$27.
$12 single max. That's kind of I like that game a lot. The fair catch, I think it's
Yeah,
called. Do you play the
yes, the fair
same?
catch.
You play the same thing every week?
Yeah, I basically play that. It's about 15 lineups,
Okay.
and then I play cash games, like equivalent dollar amount of cash games on the side.
Okay. Interesting.
Just all the double ups, all the single entry double ups, like
Right.
up to the $250 double ups. But yeah, I think especially for cash, you want to focus on those single entry tournaments
Yeah.
because.
And
Yeah, anyways.
you're a good cash player. You know what you're talking about. You just play Moss, right?
Oh yes,
You're
for
not
sure.
overthinking. You're not trying to fade
can't-
anybody in that game. You just play him,
No,
right?
you
Because
can't.
if he gets hurt on the first carry, it doesn't even hurt you.
Right. And it's not even good. Right. You said it. It doesn't matter what he does. It's not
Yeah.
going to hurt you or help you.
But if he scores 21 points, like you're literally dead before the tournament starts if you don't play him. Yeah.
Right.
Before the cash game starts if you don't play him.
Right. Yes, you're exactly right. Yeah. In cash games, a lot of times you just want to follow the ownership. At least when, you always probably want to play the couple highest owned guys, and then maybe you can do things different from there. But yeah, you never want to get beat by the chalk in cash games.
Yeah, especially when it's gonna be 95%. Like actually, like we talk about free squares, we talk about chalk. Like this is an actual situation where everyone in the big cash game is just gonna play them.
Right. Actual 95%. We're used to the chalky guys. Sometimes they'll get to 50 in cash games or 40, this is much different.
So let's jump into players here. But first, a note from our sponsors at Circa. Get ready for the ultimate big game parties at Circa Resort and Casino. Super Sunday is in Las Vegas this year. Watch the big game poolside at Stadium Swim's big game viewing party. Massive screens, booming game sound, and a view of the pyrotechnic and visual effects throughout the game. Snag the best seat in the sun with day beds, poolside boxes, cabanas, and more. Or touchdown at the world's largest sportsbook, Circa Sports, for the big game bash. 3 stories of football glory featuring a 78 million pixel screen. Book your seat with a variety of reservation options, including bottle service, open bar, stadium-style food, and more. Don't miss these legendary viewing experiences on February 11th. The big game party is only at Circa Resort and Casino. Reserve today at circalasvegas.com. So I think we kind of hit the usually we start with kind of the chalk boring plays. I think we just hit it sufficiently there with Zach Moss. Is there anybody else you see as a really popular play this week before we jump into talking about quarterbacks?
Maybe Tyreek. only because you can afford him easier with Moss.
Right.
But no, as of now, I don't see anyone who's going to be crazy popular, especially not at quarterback.
I don't either. I think there's another running back. I think Rachaad White's going to be very popular. I think a lot of people are just going to go Rachaad White, Zach Moss, and then fill out the rest of the lineup just because he's cheap, in a good spot, has been really good lately, and kind of sticks out to me among if you do go kind of in that mid range. I think the White Moss start is just really easy for a lot of people.
Yes, I agree. I currently have that in cash.
Yeah, I think that's
people
like the
will.
cash
So
running backs. Yeah.
yes, and you're right. That will carry over to tournaments too. So yeah, I see White being pretty popular as well.
But I think wide receivers are kind of spread out. There's a lot of cheap ones we'll talk about. I don't think there's. I think maybe David Njoku at tight end might be a guy that I think a lot of people will play, but I don't think he's gonna be so popular that it's gonna be like, oh, you got to figure out if you want to fade or play this. But I think he'll be the most popular tight end. But like in a week where we have a free square, I think it opens up big time after that.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's talk quarterbacks. I guess we'll start with you started the show with saying that Miami was the most obvious play. Does that mean you're just going with Tua at 7,900? I mean, he's not he's highly priced. He's not hugely priced, but highly priced. He was rough last week, under 10 fantasy points. Hasn't had a top 10 week since week 6. Quietly, the Miami pass offense has not been quite as explosive. They still been scoring points, but not quite as many for Tua. But great matchup. Washington's allowing the most quarterback points per game in fantasy. 10 of the last 11 quarterbacks versus Washington have had a top 10 week, which is a crazy stat. The one didn't make it was Mac Jones, so we got to toss that away because the New England's terrible. But how do you feel about Tua this week? Is he going to be the most popular quarterback? Are you playing him? Who are you stacking him with? All the above.
Yeah, I was going to say it doesn't feel like he's going to be that popular, but I don't know. As we go through quarterback, I don't know that anyone's going to be that popular.
Yeah.
I want to play Tua, yeah, especially if he's not going to be the most popular. I guess I don't think he will be at that price. And I mean, like you said, you look at his game log, it's not like he's been crushing.
No.
But yeah, to me, the matchup's just too good not to target. He could do what Dak just did to them. So it's just so easy to throw for 304 touchdowns in this spot. So yeah, I do want to play some Tua, because the Washington guys have been so good to play as well. I mean, they scored 10 points last week against Dallas, and Howell still threw for 300. Curtis Samuel, I think, was the highest scoring receiver on the slate. I mean, Howell's completed 28 passes in at least 28 passes in like 6 straight games. He's got 300 yards in 4 of those games. So like, it's just at least one of his pass catchers should have a big game. So yeah, I think the game just makes sense to stack. Who am I going to play him with? Tyreek, obviously, but not, I could see playing him with Waddle.
Yep.
Instead of Tyreek, I will do that too. I mean, Tyreek is expensive.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to pay off a $9,600 price tag. I mean, so yeah, I like, especially because Waddle will be much less popular. So I definitely have interest in Waddle. But yeah, I do like Tua. I like CJ Stroud too in this top range for tournaments. I don't think hardly anyone's going to play Stroud now that he's up to 8,100. Part of the reason I like these guys is there's just not a lot of high ceiling quarterbacks on this slate, especially if I'm fading Hurts. Of course, Hurts has a massive ceiling, but just in general, there's not a lot of spend up options. And I think you can afford Stroud in tournament. You can afford Stroud easier on the slate with some of the value, especially if Dalton Schultz ends up being out. But yeah, I like those 2 guys up top. I think for cash games we're going to go cheaper, but I don't know. What do you think of this top range of quarterbacks?
It's tough. I don't think I'm going to play Hurts either, with the theory that he's been a quarterback 1, so a top 10 quarterback in 10 straight games. Like, it's just with the tush push. I mean, he just gets rushing touchdowns almost every week. It's just like, and the part of why DeAndre Swift hasn't gone quite as crazy as he could have is he just doesn't. He's a 2-yard line. It's just automatic. It's automatic Hurts. It's just such a huge boost. Like, every single time you get there. Not only do they run that play, but it's an automatic touchdown. It's just, it's wild. I mean, we talked a lot about in the offseason, but it's so effective that Hurts is an automatic touchdown if they get inside the 3-yard line. So I don't think I'm going to play him either. A little bit of weather, a little bit of the Niners defense. And he's 8,200. Like, he's really expensive. And mostly just because I like Tua a lot more this week. I think just it should have a better setup. The matchup is so good. Stroud's really interesting. I'm glad you brought him up. He's 8,100. He's obviously been going off. I think 300 yards 4 weeks in a row. This is the best pass defense he's played in quite a while. Like, the Broncos have played really well on defense since that Miami game. Essentially, like they were obviously embarrassed in that game. They've been really good lately. They've only allowed multiple touchdown passes to one quarterback in the last 7 weeks, so they've been really good against passing touchdowns. But you say all that, and everybody knows that. I'm not telling anybody anything new, but that means nobody's going to play Stroud. Everybody's going to play. They'll be playing. People play some Hurts. There'll be people play Tua. Like you said, people go lower. I think Stroud is pretty under-owned, and that makes him interesting to me in a tournament just because the upside is significant. And you mentioned there's not a lot of significant upside quarterbacks on the slate with so many of the bigger guys we're used to off the slate.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's a relatively tough matchup, but that's going to keep people off of him. Yeah. And he's succeeded in pretty much every matchup so far.
It feels like if they get ahead, he'll throw, and if they get behind, he'll throw. Like, I don't think, obviously unless they get up, 28-0, he's going to stop throwing. But like, I don't think there's many game scripts in this game where it's going to be where he may not do well. That's how possibly the answer, but I don't think there's many game scripts where he's not going to throw the ball a bunch.
No, I agree. And it's been nice to see he's been making some plays with his legs recently.
Yeah, he really did last week. He looked good last week doing that.
Yeah, he did. He's also rushed for 3 touchdowns in his last 5. So, I mean, at least that's there to possibly help his ceiling. So, yeah, I have a little interest.
So we talked a bunch about, Washington and Miami so far. So can you jump down 1,700 from Tua and play Sam Howell? Could you play the other side of this game? How do you feel about that strategy?
Yeah, I think that's okay. I'm considering that. I think, if you're going to get 300 plus yards from Howell, I would want to play him on this slate. It's tough to know who to pair him with, but yeah, I guess I'm still not quite done with McLaurin. I think I could still make the click. I mean, he's still seeing the targets. He's their best receiver. He's got to have a big game in him sooner or later. But Dotson and Samuel are cheap.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense, especially if you want some exposure to Hill or Waddle. I do. It's
amazing. It's amazing how easy it is to play Tyreek if you just do that. You just go Howell and Samuel, and you have Zach Moss, and Tyreek, it suddenly becomes easy to slot it.
Yes, and also, who are you playing? There's not that much opportunity cost. So looking at who do you want to play besides Howell? I guess in this 6K range and even below, the top two.
It's Purdy and Goff, right?
Yes. And if you want to go a little lower, Russ maybe. I don't know. So yeah, that's Howell looks pretty good when you compare him to just those guys.
How do you feel? It seems like you're probably not in on Purdy in the past game here. I'm a little worried about the rain. If it wasn't for that, though, all his numbers are great. He hasn't thrown a lot of touchdowns lately. But the Eagles have been kind of thrashed by the pass lately. I think he had top 2 quarterback, not even a top 10 quarterback, a top 2 quarterback in 3 or 4 weeks. And they were good against Mahomes, but Josh Allen smoked them. They were good against Tua, but they have given up some ceiling games there. If you told me it was sunny and 65, I'd really like Brock this week at the price, but I'm a little bit worried about the weather, and maybe this game gets a little ugly if the weather comes into play.
Yeah, me too. I'd be in on him if the weather was okay. It's always tough because I never know who to pair him with, but I'm a big fan of Purdy in general. And he's looked really
by the way,
good.
that third Ayuk last week was awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. And, look at Purdy's numbers. 3 out of the last 4 with 24 fantasy points or more. I mean, he can do that to any team. The Niners just have so much talent. And, yeah, Purdy's one of those talented guys. It's not just like these guys are bringing Brock up. He's a good quarterback. So, yeah, I would have interest in him if the weather's okay. But like I said, who do you pair him with? Normally I pair him with McCaffrey and one of the pass catchers, but I just never know which one to pick.
Yeah, Ayuk's more expensive. I think Ayuk's probably more of a floor guy. You're here to get, but it's hard to tell. I mean, Debo, last week had the end around for the touchdown. Then he had 7 catches. So, like he had 9 targets this week. Like I think Ayuk only had 4, but scored the touchdown. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations with 2 good receivers. It's always hard to pick. I probably just kind of lean Ayuk, although he's $1,000 more too, so you want to save some money. But Kittle's in the mix too. When you got all 3 of them, it makes it really, really hard because they've just got 3 really good pass catching options. And obviously, you mentioned McCaffrey, like that's a pass catching option too. Obviously, he is tough to pair it with. Is there any cheap quarterbacks you like? You mentioned Russ; he's 5,700 on DraftKings. Baker's 5,500. Minshew 53. Is there anybody down here you think you might get to, or is it kind of like Howell or Purdy, and I'll stay above that?
I'm considering it. I don't think I'll play Baker, but you think it'd be fine if somebody wanted to play Baker and Mike Evans. It's just a good matchup against Carolina.
Mike Evans has been really good. Like 9 plus targets a game. He's averaging 75 plus yards a game. I mean, he's been just quietly really, really, really good again.
Yeah, and I just throughout the summer we saw Quentin Johnson being drafted ahead of him in best ball, and Smith and Jigba drafted ahead of him in every single draft. And just remember that
Jigba's like shown some signs that he's going to be really good, but man. Ooh, Quentin Johnson.
Yeah.
That's Quentin Johnson's not looking good right now.
No, but yeah, Evans has looked great. I mean, still looks like the alpha number 1 wide receiver, and he's got a ceiling on par with pretty much anyone on the slate besides Tyreek. So yeah, I could see that. I kind of have, I'm considering Kenny Pickett. I mean, it's a tough click when you look at his game log, but I mean,
that's just a pure Matt Canada fade.
Yeah, and like a pure matchup play too, kind of like, could he fall into 3 touchdowns? He's got some interesting options that you could pair him with. Like, yeah. I think all of his pass catchers are interesting, and they're all pretty cheap. So like maybe to Kenny Pickett and maybe to Russ. I don't normally play Russ, but maybe this week. I don't know. What do you think about this range?
Russ has been over 200 yards passing once since week 4.
Yeah, but I mean, he does. If you look, you
funny you said that, and I looked.
Throw.
He hasn't, but like his numbers are still pretty gross passing wise. They don't like last week he had 134 against Minnesota, but he ran one in last week, so it worked out. It makes sense, and that game could get a little back and forth if Houston plays well. But man, I find it hard to trust Russ.
Yeah, I do too. His numbers are pretty gross, but 20-4 touchdown to INT ratio is okay.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, he has no pick since week 6.
He's been running more. I mean, but you're right. Like ceiling, does he have a ceiling? That seems tough. I don't know. How much does he need to score? Can he get in the 20s?
Yeah, the ceiling is probably he runs 2 in and throws for 2. Like that's a good ceiling, but that's probably the way it. And he throws for like 225.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if I'll play Russ. You're right. It's a tough click, but I have interest in that game, and like I think Sutton and Judy are okay too. So I don't know. I don't think I'll get to Russ though.
I like Sutton a lot. We'll talk about receivers, but I think that's a good play too. I really like him this week. If I were going to play Denver pass game, that's what I do. I would not play as Russ. I would just go Sutton. Last before we jump into running backs, Jared Goff. We kind of mentioned him a second at 6,500. We talked to him earlier. We're talking about this game. The Saints are pretty good against quarterbacks. The Saints it's hard to run it back. Do you find yourself finding any Goff this week? It's hard with the way they run the ball too. I don't think I'm getting there this week.
I don't think I'm getting there either. He hasn't looked very good recently. And yeah, no, but I can see an argument to it. I don't know pair him with St. Brown, and you're going to have a ton of cheap options on New Orleans. I mean, I get it, but yeah, no.
If I did it, it would be Goff, St. Brown, and Kamara, and I'd go cheap elsewhere.
Yeah, that works too.
Yeah, that's the way I'd play it, because I'd play it with the theory that there's a lot of Kamara catches. Kamara does really well, because I think that's the way this game gets back and forth. He scores twice, and Amon-Ra scores twice. I think it could work well, but I would do it with Kamara. I wouldn't do it with one of the cheap receivers.
Okay. Makes sense.
And then you're playing. I mean, there's so many things you could do with Zach Moss this week that like almost everything is in play. So it kind of makes the rest of the slate fun. It's not a. I like that when we have sometimes we have a free score, it kind of ruins everything because every week goes the same way. I think this week we get at least some different ways to go. But let's jump into some of those different ways. Let's talk about running backs here. But first, note from our sponsors at Splash. RotoWire is proud to partner with Splash Sports for the 2023 fantasy season. Splash Sports empowers gaming commissioners to earn by creating contests. Commissioners can set up contests, add their style, and enjoy the evolving Splash Sports platform for customized preferences. From daily to season-long contests, Splash Sports caters to various playing styles, such as DFS, Pick X, and traditional Survivor. And unlike traditional sportsbooks, Splash Sports pits you against friends and family, not the house. Splash goes beyond betting, a space where friends can connect, strategize, and share in the excitement of sports. RotoWire will be running weekly DFS tiers contests on Splash Sports all season long. Can you beat the RotoWire experts? Visit rotowire.com/splash to enter today. I got through the /splash much better than usual on that one. Expensive running backs. There are a bunch this week. We talked about Kamara a little bit, but there are 4 or 5 guys over 7,000 I think are in play. 3 that are over 8,000. Christian McCaffrey, the 16 touchdown beast is at 9,000. Obviously in play every time he takes the field. Austin Eckler is still 8,300, has been really struggling. There's been not much good here. Explosive run rates among the worst in the NFL, but he's still 8,300. Alvin Kamara, 8,200. We mentioned him a couple times already. I think that it could be a lot of targets his way. Mostert, 7,300. Achane might be back, probably going to be back. Affects him a little bit. He's got a lot of touchdowns too. Kyron Williams, we talked about, 7,200. Huge in his return, but going against the Cleveland defense this week. What do you do at the top slate of running back? I think we talked about some cheap guys already, but who do you like among this top botch?
I really like McCaffrey. Especially if that game's going to have some questionable weather. I like the San Fran side in this spot. It sort of makes sense for me if I'm fading the passing games. I think the $9K price tag and a matchup away to Philadelphia will keep enough people off of him to where I think he's a pretty good tournament play. McCaffrey can put up 30 plus against anybody. And even like 25 here might be pretty good. I have a lot of interest in Kamara if Olave is out. I think we talked about it. Yeah. It could be a ton of targets for Kamara in the spot. I mean, even with Olave in there, they have injuries to other pass catchers. But if Olave is out, then I really like Kamara. I think that's all I'm doing in this range. You mentioned, I can't get to Eckler. You mentioned he has not been good.
The only real theory on Eckler is good game script, to have the lead against New England, and the fact that nobody will play him at that price.
Right. Yeah.
It's really the only argument is that nobody's going to play him. He's obviously really talented. They'll be ahead in that game, and it could work. But he hasn't shown anything. He's only at 3.6 catches per game. They have not used him, and I think it's a career low.
Yeah, you mentioned the numbers just make it a tough click. I'd even be worried, like in a good game script, you'll see plenty of Josh Kelly. I don't know. I just don't know if he has a ceiling. I would just
play Kamara, and I don't think Kamara's gonna be so high that I want to fade. I think I would just play Kamara instead.
Yep, I think you're right. So, what about anybody else? Anybody underneath Kamara you like?
Above 7,000 and below Kamara, not really. Mostert has a great game script too. We talked about the Miami pass game. Like Miami could get ahead and they can hand the ball off a ton. You got a lot of guys right now. I don't think I'm going to play him at 7,300, even though it works. He scored a lot of touchdowns. If Achane is back, I have a problem. I have trouble playing either of those guys. Achane's 6,900. Like, he's insanely explosive, could score a bunch of times, but man, last time I played him 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, and he made it one play. So I don't think I trust that fully. Cleveland's allowed one 75-yard rusher all year long. So you look at Kyron Williams, who was great last week, but that was Jaylen Warren. I think he had a really long touchdowns when he got over 75 yards. But Kyron Williams has been really good. He's played 7 games, been a top 10 running back in 5 of those. Clearly a full workload. He had 22 touches last week, 2 touchdowns. I just don't think I'm getting there at the price. I thought might be a little bit cheaper. I'm probably not going to get there.
No, I'm not either. How do we feel about Myles Garrett being out? Myles Garrett's out, right?
Is he out? I know he was kind of trending that way. Have they said he's out?
I guess I haven't seen officially, but
I think you're going to be right. I think that's probably the way it's ended up being. But that changes that entire offense or entire defense. I mean, he's probably the defensive player of the year right now, and he's in the MVP discussion too.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that does change it. Like, it still wouldn't change it for me probably as far as playing Kyren, but it would make more sense with Myles Garrett out.
Yeah, I think so too. He just hasn't been doing a lot. They have not ruled him out. It's a shoulder injury. I'm just scrolling through here. I thought maybe they announced something this morning, but they haven't really said anything. He's not out yet. I think that he's very much on the questionable tag.
Okay.
Right now. Yeah,
sounds good.
I'm looking to make sure there was no news since we started recording, but I haven't seen anything. But yeah, obviously I think that affects whether you want to play Kyren or not. I'm definitely no if he's playing, and then I'm probably not, but I might start to think about it if Cleveland starts to look a little bit banged up. What about the cheaper side? I think we've seen Bijan Robinson the last couple of weeks finally getting touches, finally emerging. We've been calling for it for weeks and weeks, but it seems like maybe they're finally doing it. He's 6,700. DeAndre Swift against the Niners, 6,600. We've got the Detroit guys in here. We've got Breece Hall in here, who explosive, but has been awful the last 6 weeks. We got Ramondre in here at 6,000, been really good lately, and then Rachaad White, who I think will be pretty popular, 6,300. This mid-range has a lot of names, a lot of guys. How do you kind of parse through it this week?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I like Rachaad White.
I love Rachaad White.
Yeah,
this week I love Rachaad.
Yeah,
White.
Right. This week it's tough to look past that. I mean, I played him last week. Just in general, I've been impressed with White this season. His role is amazing, and the matchup's amazing. But yeah, I like White the best. I think if I had to pick another one, probably Bijan. The matchup doesn't look great, and obviously the total is like 33, but it's probably a pretty good matchup with Boyle on the other side. It's just going to mean so many opportunities for Atlanta, you'd think, and Bijan is talented enough to take advantage. He's working the passing game, going to get a lot of usage. Just, pretty good spot, underrated spot for Bijan, I think. But yeah, Rachaad White would be my favorite.
Yeah, me too on White. I just think that Carolina's league high allowing points to running backs. I think it's just the matchup is just so good. He's averaging 99 plus yards a game in the last 6 games. He was 17 touches last week, 100 yards rushing. I just think he's so clear their guy. It's just it stuck out to me at 6,300. I think that really works out well. Bijan's interesting because the Jets have actually been struggling against the run. They have not been as good. They're better against the pass against the run. You can kind of get them. They've allowed a lot of yards to running backs over the course of the season. We talked about how good he was last week. He still had 50% of the backfield touches. Like, it's still there. Just the fact that he scored twice, I think we kind of just forgot that it's still there. Had 19 touches, but Algier played a bunch too. I think I just prefer White this week. I don't have any problem with Bijan. Obviously, talent's there. Can you do anything with the Lions running backs? I mean, obviously, the Lions run the ball a ton, but man, talk about a split situation. Like, they're really a split situation.
Yeah, no, I can't. Like you said, they're really a split situation. I don't know which one to click, and I just feel like there's better guys to click. Also, this guy in the chat has convinced me to consider Kyren.
You're back in on Kyren after that? Yeah, no, he made some good points.
If Myles Garrett is out, I think I would. Yeah, I'd be considering Kyren just because it looks like no one's really going to play.
You can figure out what the username is. That EWE2K?
EWE2K, I think we'll go with. Yeah, I mean, he's right. With no Garrett out, it would look pretty good. Kyren is the new Eckler. I don't know if I'd go that far, but 6 catches and a touchdown through the air last week. Cup is they haven't been using Cup like they used to. Be a really good spot for the Rams against Joe Flacco with no Myles Garrett. Yeah, I think those are some good points. Point being, I like Kyren better than the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs played 60 snaps last week. It's just that he only had 15 touches, and David Montgomery's right there. So you get to the goal line, and they're going to give the ball to Montgomery too. And then you've got Laporta. It's just they got a lot of weapons, and when you have that many split touches with running backs, it's just hard to time. We'll talk about it in a second with Pittsburgh too. It's hard to time.
Yes, and Gibbs got all those snaps because they were getting crushed by Green Bay, from the jump, and just had to start passing in the second half or in the second quarter, basically. But yeah,
that's a really good point. He might be very game script dependent right now.
It seems like it.
Real quick before we get the cheaper guys, talk to me about Ramondre Stevenson. 6,000, another good week, 21 for 98, had 5 catches also. He has over 85 rushing in 3 straight, 20 and 21 carries the last 2 weeks. It seems like they are just decided that he's the only guy on the offense that's any good. They're just like really feeding him. But man, it's such a mess. If LA can score, the game script might get bad here. The Chargers, you never know where you're going to get, but they are favored, I think, by 6 points. Can you get to Ramondre at all this week? I find myself either going lower or just playing Rachaad White.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, but I think Ramondre is a pretty good play, actually.
Yeah, the price is good. I mean, for what he's done lately, this is a very playable price.
Yes. I mean, if you're going to get 20 plus touches and some catches, I mean, they're at home against a Chargers team that struggled. I don't know that I'll get there, but I do think he's a pretty good option. But yeah, I kind of like some guys for cheaper. That's why I might not get there.
Well, tell me that, because we've talked plenty about Zach Moss, so we know he's there at 4,600. Talking about who you do like cheaper. Is it Chuba Hubbard with the new coaches in Carolina? Is it picking one of the Pittsburgh running backs against Arizona? What's your plays under Ramondre, but above Zach Moss?
Yeah, I'm thinking about picking one of the Pittsburgh backs. Jaylen Warren, I think either of them. Yeah. I have a little bit of interest in Javonte Williams. If I'm going to have, I think he's an interesting run back if I'm going to have some Texans.
Yep.
He's 20 plus touches in 3 of the last 4 weeks and involved in the passing game. So pretty cheap. I don't mind Javonte. I think those were the guys that stuck out most. Maybe you could sell me on someone else.
I'm not going to sell you on anybody else. I think that Chuba Hubbard was good last week, but I don't think I really want to go with Carolina right now. And who knows what the new coaches do? If I were going to do it, obviously Moss, but then for me it's Jaylen Warren. You got to pick one of these guys. They're the same price essentially, 54 and 5,200. I just think Arizona allowed 287 yards and 3 touchdowns to Rams running backs combined last week of total yards. Give me Warren with the explosive guy, hit a couple big plays. You got to pick one. It's tough, but I pick Jaylen Warren. I think I'm going to play some Jaylen Warren too. I think that the matchup situation is just so good right now against Arizona.
Yep, I agree with all that. Just one last thing. Talk me off of maybe taking a chance on Antonio Gibson.
That's an interesting call because you figure game script.
If you got a Tua stack, he's 4,500, right? And if you got Tua and Tyreek already, is it too crazy?
I don't think it's too crazy. His targets last week, 5, 5, 6, and 4. If they get down, he can touch the ball. What you're hoping for? You're hoping for like 13, 14 touches if you do it?
Yeah. You just need him to catch some passes and find the end zone. I just thought it was interesting to bring up, because he's the same price as Zach Moss. So, you could play him together. But, think if you're playing the Millie Maker or that massive $3.20 max tournament and you got a Dolphins stack, I mean, what I would do if I was, multi-entering those big tournaments, it'd be tough for me not to just swap Gibson for Moss on a couple of those Dolphins stacks just for the crazy leverage, right? I mean, one guy's going to be 70%, one guy's going to be 2% or something,
it's a really good call and really fun call. It's just that if they get down 21-3 early, which is very possible, he could have 12 targets. I don't think that's crazy that he catches 8 balls if they get way behind. It's just, I like that. I mean, they have a lot of options and they'll throw the ball a bunch, but he has 20 targets last 4 weeks, been very involved at the same price. It's definitely fascinating. I like that. That's a spicy one right there. I think
crazier things have happened, right?
It's not even that crazy. I think it's a little bit crazy, but also a little bit well thought out too.
Okay, cool.
Someone has a tight end question in the chat. I would take Logan Thomas as your waiver pickup if Dalton Schultz was out. That's for Quincy Davis. We've talked a lot already. We've gone long, but let's get into receivers here. We've talked a bunch about the expensive receivers. Tyreek Hill is 9,600. There are a lot of expensive guys. Keenan Allen's 9,000. AJ Brown's 8,800. Amon-Ra's 8,500. There's a lot of really expensive guys this week. Then you got Cooper Kupp. The ghost of Cooper Kupp is 7,800. Mike Evans 77. And Waddle 76. What do you do in this top range? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. We've talked about it. We're playing Tyreek when we can, but 9,600 is a lot of money. Do you like anybody else in the 8,000s? It sounds like probably Amon-Ra if you had to play somebody.
Yeah, but in general, probably not.
Niners can't cover outside good wide receiver number ones over the course of this year. I know DK did nothing last week, but AJ Brown's good against cover 3 and 4. Niners played a lot of that. I think that he's due. He had that streak of 125 yards, and then he has under 66 yards 3 weeks in a row. I can talk myself into AJ Brown this week.
Well, no one is going to play him, so I think it's a pretty good tournament play if you wanted to do it.
Niners are 20th in points to wide receiver ones. They are not good against stud receivers normally. I know they were last week.
Yeah, I mean that's like you'd want the weather in that game to be okay,
and you want the Niners to score early too.
Yes, but man, it makes all the sense in the world. Yeah, nobody's going to play him. People will play Keenan over him. Tyreek will be way more popular. So yeah, it makes sense from that perspective. Yeah, going down the list, I don't think I can do it with Kupp anymore. Maybe you can chime in on that, but I prefer Evans.
It's hard to get there at 7,800 on Kupp. Like if he was like they really priced him down, I could talk myself into it. But I mean, he hasn't topped 50 yards in 5 games.
Yeah, and it's crazy to say, it's hard to get there at this price tag when this is the first time we've ever seen him priced below 8K. I mean, we were jumping to click on him when he was under 9K, but now, yeah, it's tough. I really like Waddle for 7,600, especially because I don't see him being that popular. Like Tank Dell, 7,400. I think Dell will be relatively popular. And rightfully so. 5 touchdowns in the last 4 games for Dell. He would have had another big game last week, but had that 62-yard catch called back.
That hurt.
Questionable illegal shift.
It was his illegal shift too, right?
Yeah. I don't know about
I hated that call. I hated that call too. I had Tank Dell, but I just didn't like that. I thought he had stopped or whatever it was. They didn't show the other angle. They were like, oh, there are 2 guys in motion, but they didn't show somebody else. I don't know what happened, but
why are you throwing that flag? Just don't throw that flag. Anyways,
2 other guys in this range. We talked a little bit about Devontae Smith earlier. I do like him this week. I think I'm going to play one of the Eagles receivers on some lineups. I think that I've kind of talked myself into doing that. But, if Ward shadows A.J. Brown, we talked about that before, then maybe the Niners are different against wide receiver ones. But, man, I think that opens up for Devontae. His target share without Goddard has skyrocketed. They use him differently without Goddard out there. And then Ayuk is at 7,200. You can get there too. But what about Michael Pittman? 7,100. We haven't talked a lot about Colts Titans. 8+ catches each of the last 4 games. Good matchup. Great usage right now. You can throw against Tennessee. He was 10 for 107 last week on 13 targets. I really like Michael Pittman this week at 7,100 in a game that I don't think anybody's really going to talk about because everybody's going to play Zach Moss, and that means probably nobody's going to play Michael Pittman.
Another great call. Yeah, you're exactly right.
If you fade Moss, I think you play Pittman.
Yes, or downs. We'll get
or downs.
5,100. But you're right. That strategy, I mentioned it on the podcast last week of fading the chalk running back for the passing game has won tournaments in 3 of the last 5 weeks or something. And because nobody does it.
And I don't think you have to play Minshew or anything, but I think if you go no Moss, you hope he runs for 60 yards, no touchdowns. You just play Pittman, and they're going to score, and he's going to score some points in that game. You want those points, and if Moss misses, it means someone else hits. Pittman is where I think downs make sense too. I could certainly talk myself into that depending on what you need salary wise, but man, Pittman's really involved right now.
Yes, and it's targeting passing games against the Titans is something we historically like to do, so it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, I like that play a lot. I think that's the way to go if you do fade Moss in tournament. Some question in the chat: would you rather have AJ Brown or Brandon Ayuk? I don't know if you mean as players or fantasy wise. I'd rather have AJ Brown this week. Salaries are much different in DFS, so that's different there. But just like heads up, yeah, I take AJ Brown. Somebody mentioned about a flex play. I'd play ETN in the flex over those other names there too. Someone said that Tank Dell wasn't set for a full second, so apparently we need to go to ref school. But I still hated the penalty. Okay. What about the mid range at wide receiver? I find I usually love the 6,000 range at wide receiver on DraftKings. It's always like, oh, I can play this guy, this guy, this guy. Man, you're gonna have to help me this week because I see very little in this range this week. You could get to Nico Collins, Debo 6,200. I think in that game he's the cheapest of the receivers. You could go there. I could probably talk myself into Adam Thielen at 6,800, but this is a tough range this week.
Yeah, it's a tough range. I could get to Nico Collins if Dalton Schultz is out. I would think Olave. Olave. I could get to Olave for sure.
If he plays and Shaheed's out and Thomas is already out, Olave becomes really interesting if he plays.
Yeah, I agree. And it's one of those where, sometimes you don't get the news till Saturday or Sunday, and people have already decided what they're going to do. And they have it would just means that Olave, people will play him, but he wouldn't be as popular as he should be. It's a really good spot against Detroit at home. So yeah, I would like Olave if he plays. I don't know, going down Debo, I guess, in that game, cheapest of the San Fran options.
Yep.
Good game last week. I never mind playing Debo. He just has so many ways to score 2 touchdowns. Yeah, I guess I'll keep going down.
Yeah, go for it.
I think McLaurin's pretty good at 5,500 if you're targeting that game. Sutton, I know you can talk about Sutton, but I like Sutton as well. Downs, I mentioned at 5,100. Downs was close to crushing last week. 13 targets and so many close ones that, if he catches, he's turning up and going for a big gain. He had a couple end zone targets. So I have some interest in Downs. Pittsburgh receivers, Deontay and Pickens.
Yeah.
Kind of like Pickens this week in tournaments. Judy, I have interest in Judy too, just because I think Sutton is a better play and Sutton's going to be more popular, but Judy's cheap now and he's got a questionable tag, but he's healthy. They just limited him the first day with that groin injury. But yeah, I just like that game. So I could take a chance on Judy. Dotson, I think. I like Dotson. Yeah, I don't know. I'll stop there.
Real quick question in the chat. So we're talking receivers. Somebody said flex Connor, Downs, or Rice. I'm taking Rashee Rice for sure. He's not on our slate that we're talking about, but I'm playing Rashee Rice, and everywhere I have him, I put him as a top 30 wide receiver right now. I think that they're shifting towards him right now. I'm playing Rice for sure. In this range, I have two guys I really like. You mentioned them. I like McLaurin again. I think that he has 7+ targets each of the last 7 games. I know he hasn't quite got there, but he's still been really, really active. Coming back in that run back against Miami, I really like McLaurin this week. 5,500. He only has 2 touchdowns all year. I always kind of like that. Feels a little bit due to me. I know that doesn't really make sense, but he's just really, really involved. They're going to throw the ball a ton. Give me a talented guy under 6,000 every time. And I like Sutton a lot. 5,400. They look to him in the red zone. Houston struggles against outside wide receivers. He plays there over 80% of the time. He had 6 targets, 61 yards last week. He just missed a touchdown. He got tackled at the 2 or the 3, which I had him in my main lineup, so that was a frustrating one. Between that and Tank Dell, it's a frustrating few minutes there for receivers, but I like Sutton a lot. You went down a little bit further. The 4,000s is a little bit tough. I agree with you on Dotson. Same kind of theory we've talked about all day with Miami and Washington. I think Pickens is the guy. 4,800. It's a big tourney kind of dart kind of play, but man, he just plays a lot. He hasn't a lot of targets. I think he's been over 6 targets last 5 weeks, but he's in there every snap. He can hit a big play. This Arizona defense is not good. I think that one of these weeks, it's going to be a huge George Pickens, 140 yards and 2 touchdowns a week. Timing it is almost impossible, but playing home against Arizona is about as good a spot for that as you can get.
Yeah, I agree. And there was supposedly a comment last week. Rappaport reported that they were going to focus on Pickens more. Didn't happen. People were disappointed. It could happen this week.
It always happens the week after we play him, right?
Right.
Always.
And he's very cheap, and we know he's the type of player with a big ceiling. So, yeah, really like Pickens. And it's unfortunate about Sutton. I just would have been his 6th straight game with a touchdown. So, crazy. Yeah.
Pretty quietly, too.
Yep.
So under 4,500, I think that we'll talk about some names here real quick, but I think Curtis Samuel's the guy that jumps out to me. 4,100. He had 12 targets last week. I just think you talked before about Antonio Gibson. I think it probably works, but for Samuel, I think if they get behind, it seems like it's just the easy dump off, but he really can make plays in space. He's the just cheapest run back against Miami. So I really like Samuel. If I were to go Samuel or Dotson, I'd go Samuel this week just based on the price and the targets last week. I do like McLaurin, but I think, if you're going to go a cheaper one, I'd go Samuel over Dotson. What about in the 3,000s? We talked about A.T. Perry a little bit, 3,300 if all the New Orleans guys sit. He seems to be the next guy up, but, I think you're taking a zero into play when you play anybody like this. But is there anybody else down here you like in the 3,000s, kind of below the Curtis Samuel, who people will like?
Yes. One guy. Well, more than one guy, but I like one guy the most.
I have one name bolded. Let's see if it's the same guy.
And that's if we get Joe Flacco starting for Cleveland.
It's the same
he
guy.
Got his favorite target, Elijah Moore. I mean, how do you not like Elijah Moore for 3,500? Joe Flacco is like the perfect quarterback for a guy like that. You could see 10 plus targets in this spot. I mean,
I can't believe we're talking about Joe Flacco in 2023.
It's unbelievable, right? So yeah, you were going to say Moore too?
I was going to say Moore too. 23 targets last week. It's been pretty blah with them, but if you're going to get down here in 3,500, you're going to give me 8 targets. That's always something I want to take. Should be an underdog. The Rams are favored. Should be passing. You mentioned Flacco. Flacco, kind of the perfect guy for him. You're right. Just quick little dump off and make a play. It was Moore for me too. I think the other 2 names down here who I think are playable. I've talked about him a few weeks ago, but he hasn't really come through. But Jonathan Mingo, the targets are there. 7, 6, and 6 last 3 weeks. They seem to be building him in the offense a little bit here. He was finally productive last week. He was 4 catches for 60 yards. I think he works down here as you don't want to play Perry, you don't want to play Elijah Moore. They're a little bit risky on Perry, a little bit boring on Moore. I think that Mingo is maybe the combo of those, and a little bit of upside with the target, so it kind of blends those two. And then at some point this year, Jameson Williams is going to do something for us. It's going to be I know there's a hard time. I think he has more than 2 catches in a game, but he played a lot last week. He played 62% of the dropbacks. So he's playing more and more each week. Obviously, we know he's super explosive. Kind of a big tournament. I'm going to take a shot here kind of play. But Jameson Williams has the talent and hopefully the opportunity here. And obviously with a good quarterback in Goff, 3,600. Not a great matchup, but I don't think he matters matchup-wise. He's going to hit a big player. He's not.
Yep, I agree. Makes sense. I hesitate to mention, but if Olave and Shaheed are both out, maybe Lynn Bowden Jr. for 3K. Like if he was going to play the slot role for the whole game, I don't know. We saw him with 2 rushing attempts last week. What a 29-yarder, a couple targets. I don't know. Worth mentioning. If Olave and Shaheed out, I probably still wouldn't do it, but maybe it's a move for bigger tournaments. I'd probably be more likely to play Juwan Johnson, but still worth mentioning. My
favorite thing about Lynn Bowden Jr. is? In my college league, he was he's eligible at wide receiver, but he played quarterback for 7 games in Kentucky his junior year. So I was able to play a second quarterback in lineups and put him in the receiver slot. It was absolute gold.
Unbelievable. Yeah, that's unbelievable.
It was people did not enjoy that when they looked down and I had 2 quarterbacks playing, but it was amazing. You very rarely get the quarterback wide receiver dual eligibility.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Tight end real quick here. Tight end's rough. Tight end is tough. Kelsey's not here. Obviously Mark Andrews is out for the year. We've got George Kittle, we've got Sam Laporta, and then kind of a bunch of dudes. Kittle's expensive, 6,200. He was great in the last week, did not do much against Seattle. It's always tough when Debo and Ayuk are both healthy. It's hard to feed 3 guys. So one guy gets left out. Last week it was Kittle. But the Eagles linebackers are beat up. This is a pretty good matchup right now. The Eagles are down to some guys at linebacker, some guys that are questionable. Their defensive line is really good. Their secondary linebackers are not quite as good. So it's kind of a good on-field matchup for Kittle, but it's just so hard. It's so hard to feed all those guys. But what are you doing at tight end? I think that I mentioned earlier, I think Njoku is going to be pretty popular, and I think he makes a lot of sense at 4,100.
Yeah, I agree. Really like Njoku. Think he'll be pretty popular.
Before you go, you know that without Deshaun Watson, David Njoku leads the Browns in targets, catches, and yards.
Wow. Yeah. I mean,
and that's some PJ Walker, that's some DTR, that's maybe Joe Flacco this week. But his targets the last 6 weeks, one more Njoku note, 9, 8, 6, 9, 15, 9.
Wow. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
I did not know. I knew he was involved, but that's a 9-15-9 last 2 weeks is pretty bonkers.
Looks pretty good. Yeah. And I'd imagine Joe Flacco will be looking for his tight end quite a bit.
I was gonna say, if he likes Elijah Moore, he's probably gonna like David Njoku.
Yes,
also.
Definitely. So yeah, I like Njoku. Think he'll be pretty popular. I just mentioned Juwan Johnson. He would get up there in popularity if you get some of those receivers out. But yeah, I think I'm not really looking at anyone until we get to Freiermuth. I don't think anyone's really going to play Freiermuth. We just saw him 9 for 120.
Yeah.
I could take a chance there. But yeah, Njoku, after that, no, you're right. It gets tough. I think the news to look for, Dalton Schultz still hasn't practiced. So I'm seeing like Brevin Jordan projecting pretty well.
Is he like 2,500?
Yes, he's min price. I'm just looking at their tight ends. Seems like he would be out there quite a bit. And he's one of those tight ends who's like a more of a receiver type. So I could play some Brevin Jordan, especially in Stroud stacks. But yeah, tight end is tough this week. I don't know. Give me somebody else if you have them.
I'm just going to play Njoku a bunch is kind of what it comes down to. But I think if you want to go up a little bit, I think Freiermuth and Trey McBride work. I mean, McBride had 9 more targets last week. He's clearly very involved. He's questionable right now, so you got to make sure that's okay. But he's 3rd in percentage of team targets at tight end the last 5 weeks. So he's just like really active and involved right now. And he's a pretty talented guy. So I think McBride, Freiermuth, and then Njoku. And then if I drop down, your Brevin Jordan call makes some sense if you just want to fully punt that. But I think that Kate Otten at 3,200 works okay. He's 449, 445 the last 2 weeks. Not very exciting. Chigo Okonkwo at 3,100. If you want to go there, he had 5 targets last week, but like that's really hard to play. Someone joked in the chat we're endorsing a Flacco stack. That is definitely not what I'm endorsing. You have some pass catchers there, but I'm probably just going to play Njoku, McBride, Freiermuth, and kind of make that work.
Yeah, I think me too. Endorsing a Flacco stack, I don't know. He's 4,600. You pair him with Njoku. It's the same guy who brought up Kyren Williams. So that's just like the perfect stack. Flacco, Kyren with Njoku or Elijah Moore. You'll have all the money in the world left. Can Flacco get to 20 points? Maybe.
Yeah. After the Super Bowl against the Ravens, I endorse nothing with Joe Flacco. I'm still bitter.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a big ask.
It is, but I think that he could have a receiver or two or a tight end that work. I mean, they're all really cheap, is what it comes down to. If he's going to dump it off to him 10 times, like I don't care how effective or efficient the yards are. I care that he has 10 friggin' targets at that price.
Right.
Yeah. Before we jump out of here, defense. I found defense hard this week. I'm hoping you're going to find somebody that you really like at a cheap price because I struggled this week. I think that Tampa Bay at 3,600 against Carolina works. I think the Falcons against the Jets going against Tim Boyle at 3,400 works. Those are kind of my 2 top favorite defenses, but I admit that they're not super, super cheap, but cheap enough. Who do you like here? I found it tough this week.
Yeah, I think you broke it down well, or the same way that I would have broken it down. I think the Falcons seem like they're going to be the most popular.
Yeah. The Jets have given up 13 sacks the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and Boyle looked, I think, worse than most people thought he would look.
That's saying something right there because I don't think anybody was saying he's going to look good.
No, but I watched quite a bit of that game, and he looked pretty incompetent, unfortunately. Like, Zach Wilson is much better.
I'm hoping that an hour and 13 minutes in, Tim Boyle probably tuned off the podcast by now.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Tim. Former Packer legend. I don't mean to talk bad, but
former Packer legend. I love it. It really is. It's Favre, Rodgers, and Tim Boyle. It's like those are the big 3 right there.
Right there it is. So yeah, I think people will go all the way down to Carolina, as you mentioned.
You're going Carolina. I was going the Bucks against Carolina. You're going actually Carolina.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said Bucks. Oh, Bucks look good too. Yeah, for sure. For people that are going all the way down, I think people will go to Carolina.
You hope Baker, but Baker, I mean, Tampa Bay's given up 10 sacks the last 2 weeks. Like they're struggling too. That's yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
If you're gonna go cheap, that's probably the way to go.
No.
Although Carolina's defense is horrible.
Scott, yeah, I don't like it at all.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing them as the most popular out of like every defense below 3K. Just people like really look for a cheap defense they can click on. I don't really like it. Like you said, they have a bad defense, and I don't think it's a great matchup like at Tampa at all. So I don't think I'm going to be doing that.
So you know where you go if you go a little cheaper, right?
Well, are you going to say the Pats?
No, I meant not that cheap, but like cheaper than Bucks.
Yeah, no. Right. No, I hear you. The one that I don't mind is the Titans. I might play some Titans. I mean, just give me a home defense against Gardner Minshew. Jonathan Taylor's out. Can't be that bad, right?
It could be pretty bad. Tennessee's pretty bad. But yeah, no, it works. So if you're going to do that at 2,800, wouldn't you just play the 49ers at 3,000?
I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm playing the 49ers in tournaments for sure. Yes. Great.
The Eagles
have
given up multiple sacks in 6 straight games. The Niners have 15 sacks the last 3 weeks. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the Niners defense is going to down. Like, the Eagles are going to score. They're going to score points. But, like, if the Niners get up a little bit, Philly has to pass. Like, I think they're going to get some sacks. I think they press the quarterback. I mean, since Chase Young has been there, that defensive line is absolutely eating right now. And in a week where I don't love any defense, I don't think there's an easy, cheap one. Like, just give me a great one at 3,000, and I'll kind of just see what happens.
I couldn't agree more. The first lineup I made has 49ers defense, so let's go.
And on the same theory, to not be biased, like if you want to play the Eagles at 2,800, like give me a great defensive line in a game under 3,000. Brock Purdy threw a pick 6 last week. If it rains a little bit, like he could slip out of his hand. He had some passes go awry again in that Cleveland game. I think I'm just going Niners or Eagles, and whatever side you like more. I'm a Niners fan. I love the defensive line right now, the defense in general right now at 3,000, but I think the Eagles at 2,800 makes sense too. I think I'm just going to go with great defenses at really cheap prices and call it a day on most teams this week. I'm just going to play one of those two.
Yep. I think that's a very sharp take, especially if we get some questionable weather.
Yeah. Some in the chat asked Juwan Johnson, Logan Thomas, or Jonnu Smith. Not Jonnu Smith. I go Logan Thomas unless all the Saints receivers sit, and then I'll go Juwan Johnson. How about you?
Yes, if just Olave being out would be enough for me to play Johnson, but it's a good spot should be a good spot for Thomas too.
Yeah, I definitely both of them over Jonnu Smith. So, Ryan, I feel like we hit it all. We've gone pretty long here talking about a lot of stuff. We hadn't chatted in a couple of weeks, so not surprising. I think we kind of hit every game. Is there anything else on your mind? Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I don't think so. That was fun. I think we covered most of it.
It was good to be back talking football with you. As always, we appreciate everybody for listening. We appreciate all the comments in the chat. It was pretty busy this morning for a Friday morning, so we appreciate that. If you want to follow Ryan on Twitter, he is at Ryan Belongia, Belongia. I am at Scott Jenstad. Jenstad's Jenstad. There's no baseball right now, so I'm talking a lot of football. If you want to talk football with me, miss me in the middle of the week when I'm talking Warriors and being upset about Klay Thompson missing a bunch of shots. But other than that, we're good. Klay redeemed himself in the fourth quarter last night, so it was good. But we appreciate everybody listening. We'll be back at you for week 14 next Friday. Hope everybody has a really good fantasy week. Win some DFS money this week. Take care.
Thanks, Scott. Good luck, everybody.